Yeah, there were a couple of songs on there where he was. One was Shadow Boxing, which was. I'm not sure if I'll ever play that song again. To be honest, I have been playing it, but it's just uh, trying to make sense of father-son relationship. You know, dad. I had no doubt that I was loved by dad, and but at times it could be a little overwhelming, and I felt like there was a lot to live up to, his standards, etc., and that sort of thing. You know, so some of that's in this song called Shadow Boxing. But then another song called "I Felt So Much," and it refers to him when I'm 5 years old, and he's driving us down to Europe on holiday with his elbow out the window, you know, and so that was a very cinematic vibe to that one, uh, and we all have. I think all relationships with our parents, well, certainly dads, the sons, can be
Yep.
very. It shapes us in a big way too,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
and so it was trying to undo some of the things I wanted to undo and leave behind, and at the same time to be grateful and thankful for the rest of it. You
Because your dad was very well known in Penarth, obviously for his connections with with sport,
know.
golf and rugby
Yeah,
and
yeah,
everything else.
yeah. It
So
was, yeah, yeah, yeah,
significant figure in Penarth, which obviously gives you some pride, a lot of pride, I imagine.
yeah. Absolutely. At his funeral, there was a he played rugby for Cardiff.
Yeah, yeah.
Etc. And so there was a big turnout, you know, and I knew there would be, you know,
Mm.
and that was beautiful, and that was great, you know, and he would have been very proud of that, you know.
So Tony, who's filming this today from Keep Cardiff Live, he came to your gig at St David's Hall,
Yeah,
and he said, to me the next day, he felt there was like an emotional kind of charge in the air. It felt like a bit of a
mm,
special show. It was a homecoming gig, but
yeah,
after all, that
yeah,
it was. Is there a lot of with both your parents being unwell and all this?
yeah.
W- were you affected by that emotionally? Were you really conscious of that walking onto St David's Hall, sort of thing, what you were going through?
um yes and no.
And it was the end of the tour, of course.
Yeah, it was it was like bringing it all home after the putting the 1960 album to rest, which has been a great journey, and it's
Mm.
done really well, and it's I'm very proud of it as a record. So it was the 122nd show of
Yeah,
the 1.5 years that I toured it, or whatever it was, you know. um, and we'd had to postpone the original show in Cardiff because of COVID.
of
So
course. Yeah.
so it was great, and we had um, there was a there was a lovely crowd there, and but I just wanted I didn't want to make too much of it in my head, because I thought, all the just it's another show, so let it be another show in that sense. But you can't ignore the fact that, if you're seeing Cardiff Bay in the St David's Hall,
Yep.
or Dick Penderyn, or these sort of songs,
Yep.
that I can bring out the Welsh ones, and
Yeah.
um, that there is that extra amount of emotion and stuff that's flying, and realizing that you're just drawing a line into things. And because dad's funeral was just a few weeks before that, as I said, my mum had a stroke just a
Mm.
week before the funeral, and so she wasn't there, he wasn't, and I remember playing St David's Hall in the 80s, and I can see my grandfather
Uh,
stood there dancing,
uh,
with my when I had a band at the time, and
yeah.
so there was a palatable sense of emotion for me. Plus, a lot of friends, family, people who come along, who I see all the time. So there's you want to make sure it's a good night and everything
Yeah.
else.
Well,
But after a couple of songs, you think, yeah, this is going to be fine.
I think Tony reviewed the gig. If I remember, I know he loved it, and he said it was really good turnout in St David's Hall as
Yeah,
well.
it was. But
Do you feel you're still kind of? Are you still building your
Oh
profile?
God, I'll always
Is
be
it still
building.
building?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, of course. I mean, I've had a beautiful loyal following for many many years, and but we're still trying to build upon that. Who isn't? I think any artist, they're either trying to build or sustain, one of the two.
Yeah.
And I think that it was interesting. I played a show in Milton Keynes at the Stables Theatre,
Hmm.
and I gathered together that night my manager Colin Lester at the time, when I signed to Sony in the '90s, who went on to have huge success with Travis and Craig David, and he came. Andy Stevens, who was the head of the label Epic that signed me, he came that night. Hadn't seen
Oh
these
wow.
guys for ages.
Yeah.
Andy left Epic and managed George Michael right until George sadly passed, and Gordon Charlton, who actually was the A&R guy this time. I got these three guys together
Yeah.
for the first time in 30 odd years, you know. Um, and Andy said some really nice stuff about he felt that the label had failed, you know, and in terms of
As in Sony?
yes, he
Yeah.
said we let you down,
Mm.
which I thought was an incredibly generous thing to say, because I don't know if it's I don't think it's that. I think what I do is when I play live, we create a lot of community. There's a lot of
Mhm.
stuff that goes on that is very, very appealing as such, but it's hard to do to break that in a bigger way, I think, because of the nature of some of the weight of the songs, some of the social justice side of the songs, you
Yep.
know, all of that stuff. I think I'm a difficult sort of act to know what do we do with this. It's great, but how do we,
Yeah.
etc. etc. But it was lovely to have that sort of confirmation from those people that said, you know, that you look at you, you've made a career out of this, blah blah blah, and you're still going. For me, there's a frustration that I can't reach a wider audience, but at the same time, there's a huge gratitude, which is also
Yeah.
still part of that emotion of bringing it home on that last show, of
Mm.
thinking, look at this, this is amazing. I've made a living, not a killing, for 30 whatever years since 82.
Yeah.
So getting nearly on 40 years. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I first, we talked about this years ago. I first came across you sitting in my parents' house. Both my parents are no longer around, sadly, but
Mm.
sitting in my parents' house, and daytime TV came on, and they were doing this thing going around the UK, and they ended up in Ebervale at the Garden
Oh, there I was
Festival. And here
singing
comes on Martyn Joseph playing "Dolphins Make Me
Dolphins Make
Cry."
Me Cry.
I thought, what's all that about, you know? And then since then we've kept in touch, and that was I think that was the single, was it on Sony?
That
Would have
was
been,
the
yeah,
single
yeah,
that
yeah.
hit the top 40, and yeah,
Any
and
thoughts on that looking back at all?
well, I
From,
just don't play. I actually played it in
I know you
Cardiff.
had
Yeah,
very ever
yeah,
play it,
I
yeah,
played
yeah,
it because
yeah,
and we multi-tracked the show in Cardiff, and I was
yeah.
listening to it the other day, and I was laughing to myself because, you know, people, I say most people would come and play that top 40 hit, and people
Yes.
would clap at that point. I said, to be honest, I can't be asked. I just feel like I've written far better songs,
Yeah.
but I did play it that night, just you know, and I thought, yeah, it's okay. It you know, Dolphins Make Me Cry is an unfortunate title for a song. You know, I think it doesn't. You know, it just sounds. The you know, the real meaning of the song is I think is fairly abrasive and hard hitting, etc. But it's a bit, yeah, perhaps too sentimental for some people, and I get that. You know, I remember there was a review in Melody Maker. They
Mm.
said Dolphins Make Me Cry, don't be ridiculous. They're hilarious. In Japan, they turn them into tuna fish. They should do the same with Martyn Joseph.
Oh, fair enough.
I actually wrote to the guy and said, "That's a great review," because, you
Yes,
know,
if you're going to be slagged off, you might as well be doing it in style.
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
But
guess.
so I have a kind of love-hate relationship with that
Yeah,
song. I'm grateful that it did reach, I don't know what, at 32 in the charts or something, or 28,
yeah,
and that was great, and brought a lot of people on board at the time.
yeah.
But I just think, you know, I would replace that song with I can think of 30 others straight away that I think were more deserving of attention. You
Well, one of my favorite songs, you know, as it would be, of course, Cardiff Bay. You know,
know? Right.
I love that song,
Thank you.
and I love it for a number of reasons. It's a beautiful tune. It's really hooky, but it's also, you know, about the connections to your family and
Yeah.
those kind of times. You know, with the young, those kind of special days.
Yeah.
Does it still ever resonate with you
It
when you're
does,
playing that, particularly in Cardiff, maybe?
because that song is the opposite direction. Where you know, some of these songs we're talking about were going about my dad.
Yeah,
This is about
yeah.
my children. It's about Daniel, in particular. He was 4 at the time when I wrote it. He's now 34. You know, so and yeah, we went down the docks, and at the time they were moving the old museum. The Maritime Museum was down in Cardiff Bay at one point. People probably remember it, but it was, and they had the headstock of the Terra Nova, which was the
Oh,
ship.
that's where. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
the
I always
ship.
wondered how that
Yeah,
came into
yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So that was you know, a connection to the responsibilities for the first time of having this little young tot looking at me, and,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I'm his dad, that
Hmm.
type of thing.
Mm.
Plus, I was reading a lot about Welsh history at the time. I a few about a year later, I wrote Dick Pendarian. I was beginning. I hadn't understood it in school, or they didn't teach it. I don't know, one of the two.
Probably
But
didn't teach
I
it.
hadn't really dug into the roots
Mm.
of Wales that much. You know, wasn't Welsh speaking, anything like that. There was this sort of, this connection beginning to come about. I was reading books by Alexander Cordell, The Rape of the Fair Country, all that sort of stuff. So Cardiff Bay is my Hiriaith song, really. The connection to this
Yeah.
place and that. But it also, again, as I sing it globally, people have come up and
Mm.
and the connection to father and son, to try and
Yeah.
describe it.
That transcends,
There's a
doesn't
line
it?
that says, "Know that I love you, and I hope that's all right."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's how
Yeah.
the song
Yeah. Yeah.
finishes, and I think it's that line that, for some reason, I can't articulate it, but resonates with fathers.
It does resonate. And another song that resonates with me as a father, because I got two daughters, is that song. You probably like this. My youngest is in the second year now in Exeter, and that song you wrote about.
Oh, driving
Yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah. And I said this is last year sometime. I mean, when she first went away, you just missed her like mad, you know. And she went back after, it must have been Christmas, Easter, or something. I said, I listened to this song. I sent her the link. She said, Dad, that made me cry my eyes out.
It does do that. Yeah,
It really pulls on the heartstrings.
yeah,
You know?
it does. I think it's primarily about letting go.
Yeah, yeah,
And the realization that, I think at some point, our children, those rules they begin to teach us.
yes,
We see in them
yeah,
new thoughts that challenge us and push our boundaries. But it's good, because basically they're leaving behind the worst of, hopefully anyway, those
yeah,
things that have
yeah.
caused us to fall,
Mm.
but embracing the best of us,
Hmm.
so that they move forward with that, and that's how
Yeah,
we
you'd
get
hope so,
better.
wouldn't you? Yeah.
Because as we look at
Mm.
generations, I look at my kids, they're far less racist, they're far less more open or more accepting than our generation was. Not that, we made
Mm.
progress from our father's generation.
Yeah, it's
I
true.
can
It's
see
true.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's, I think, the
Mm.
beauty of how we actually do evolve as generations come. Then the world is, despite the awfulness of everything that goes on, there are so many good things in place that were not in place, freedoms that didn't exist for so long. So I think I just think that's part of that song too, that sense of,
Okay.
take away the best of me, but ignore those things that
Yeah. I mean, I've driven Charlie back and forth to Exeter a few times, and those lyrics, go through my head,
yeah,
particularly on the return journey.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Your daughter's graduated, I guess, now, is she?
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
yeah,
A while
no,
ago. Yeah.
yeah. She's just had a baby. She's
Oh, well,
yeah,
okay.
I'm a
Congratulations.
granddad now, a
Yeah.
couple of times over. So yeah, no, she was working for BAFTA up until a few months ago.
Sorry about the doorbell. We are in the shop.
That's all
So.
right. Yeah. We're
Yeah.
busy in this.
Yeah. It's good to see them busy. Yeah.
Yeah. Is this your bike?
No. I travelled my other vehicle today. So both of your kids are doing well, and when they look back on those songs now, do you ever, I don't know, do they ever talk to you about those
Not
songs written
really.
when they were young from a
No,
different perspective now,
no,
or
we don't have
no?
those conversations don't really come about
Mm.
as such. I
Are
mean,
they
we
into
talk about
music?
everything. Oh yeah, well,
Yeah.
Harriet played in a band called Mellow Gang. They were doing pretty well at one point.
Mm.
And the other boys are very creative. One, Daniel is a video games designer,
Okay.
biggest Welsh company on video games,
Mm.
and Stefan is a graphic designer. So they're in the artistic, they've all followed different paths with that. But no, we don't. We don't really. I think if we had those conversations all the time, that it would be too much. They hear the music, and they
Yeah.
kind of get what I'm saying, or they come to gigs, which is wonderful. They
Yeah.
come
Well,
to the
that's lovely,
shows,
isn't it?
so they hear my
I
heart.
brought Charlie to one of your gigs at St. David's Hall. She loved that as
Oh,
well. That
great.
was like a
Yeah,
special kind of
yeah.
father-daughter
Oh,
thing
that's
as well.
beautiful.
But it's
So
like,
I think they hear some of my heart through that,
yeah, and that's okay.
that's fine, and I think
Mm.
that's enough, and
Mm.
hopefully, but they know me. I'm never far away from the deeper end of things, so I'm
Yeah,
always
yeah.
happy to go there if they want to.
I just wonder if it might be the same with, when your kids get to like 18 and 21, you bring out all those pictures from when they were young, and I wonder if maybe some of those lyrics might think, oh, Dad, did you really have to write that about me?
No, I've never felt their embarrassment.
Mm.
If it's there, they haven't articulated it,
Mm.
and I think part of, I hope somewhere that they feel a little kind of, you know, chuffed or proud that you know
Well,
that they get, you know, that,
yeah,
you
they
know,
would. They
yeah.
probably wouldn't show it, would they?
No, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But I've they've never said, oh no, you know, I've never sensed that anyway. Maybe they do. I don't know.
Talking
But
about kind of the evolution of political consciousness in a way, and how we kind of move through different generations. I mean, my youngest, the one in Exeter, she's really politically conscious.
okay,
The university she's in, there tend to be a lot of students from there from the home counties, etc., and they
yeah,
don't necessarily share the Welsh sense of socialism or
yeah.
whatever it is. But I mean, there's a controversy at the moment with of course with Gary Lineker and the
Oh
comments that he
yeah,
made about the comments made by the government about the boats and all the rest of it, and that seems to be a big furore to do with that. Um, I wonder, how do you ever get a negative reaction because you say fairly overt stuff in your songs? Do you ever get like a negative reaction to that at
I
all?
guess I don't get much of a negative reaction because I'm preaching to the choir in terms of people that are going to be at my, you know,
At the gigs, yeah.
occasionally people walk out. I mean, yeah,
Really?
yeah, I've had, especially when I've raised we have a charity that runs alongside the music called the Let Yourself Trust.
Yes.
And we change project every 6 months. So we've worked with 16 projects now across the 8 years, and one of them was a children's theatre in the West Bank in Palestine. And when I raised those issues, I've had quite nasty reactions, you know, via both via emails or whatever. But one or two people have walked out.
Would that be more so in the States, maybe?
A little bit more in the States, but not necessarily. It's there here too. It's become incredibly difficult to even raise that issue now because of the whole the Jeremy Corbyn thing, and so now you literally cannot make a criticism of it without people calling saying that you're being racist, which is a strange place to be at. But it's funny because I was driving up here today, and the thing on Lineker came on the news, and I said, "Good for you, Gary."
I was thinking about that. So I wonder what your thoughts were.
Yeah, no, my thoughts. You know, I know this thing about the BBC because I've got friends who've worked there, and I know they have to be careful in terms of what they say. So whether he's allowed to say that on television is a matter for the BBC, but not me. But I'm just glad as a public figure that he feels strongly about these things, and I didn't even realize until I read yesterday that they actually took refugees into his house as well.
Yeah.
You know, so he's walking the walk, and whether he should be as a BBC thing is none of my. I don't care. I just find it interesting and helpful that someone like that is saying something.
It's kind of reassuring that people care, you know. But I get the BBC protocols thing. I got fired from a radio station for not dissimilar matter a few years ago, but that's a different story. One of the songs you're playing for us today, Albert's Place.
Yeah,
I watched the radio because great to get that on Radio 2, and I watched the performance, and because this is the clip from the interview. There's a lady sitting there, and she's gradually becoming more and more emotional, and then eventually crying her eyes out, and then she says to you such beautiful things at the end. Could you tell us? Could you set the scene for it? Was quite a special thing, I thought.
It was. Know? I was asked by Radio 2, myself and Thea Gilmore. There was other artists. Sorry, I can't remember the second. We were asked to write songs about individual people that we were put together with in the northeast of the country. I think it was a BBC venture to try and shine some light on that part of the world rather than everything all happening down south. So I was put together with a lady called Andrea who runs a soup kitchen in Sunderland called Albert's Place. Albert's Place used to be an old butcher's. Albert used to supply meat to the big ships, and also used to apparently feed people who didn't have any food at the time. Anyway, many years later, she's taken this place over as a soup kitchen. They feed 100 people a day, good food. They find them accommodation. She's a pain in the neck as far as the council are concerned, all this sort of stuff. Amazing woman. They put us in a room together in September last year. She walked through the room. My first thought was, I'm not messing with this lady. she was bigger than life and gave me a big hug, and we got on famously. And she's beautiful. She's very passionate
Yeah.
about social justice
Very
there
emotional
in
too.
Sunderland. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So my job was to write a song about her and this. There's the bell. About her and this soup kitchen
Yeah.
in Sunderland.
Mm.
So I thought, how do I do this? You know, the greatest song about homelessness was written by Ralph McTell in the '70s, Streets of London,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But what Ralph did was he told stories. And
Yes. Yes.
if when as a songwriter, the way to describe a big issue is to find a couple of stories within that issue, and then if you tell one person's story, you tell everybody's story. You know, like
Okay.
if you know that film that was just won all the awards, All Quiet on the Western Front.
Yep. Yep.
They what do? You follow one soldier through the whole thing. You tell his
Yes.
story, you tell all the soldiers' story, etc. So I asked Andrea for stories. I said, just tell me stories about the people, etc. And I didn't know. I had about 3 weeks to write this song. So then I came back from the States, and they filmed me singing it to her for the first time in her warehouse, where they
Okay.
that's why that's
Oh, that's the film that I watched.
that's
It's the
the film
first
that you
time.
want. It's
Oh
the
wow.
first. That was the idea that they filmed these
So you
people.
kind of debuted it to her, yeah?
Exactly. That
Mm.
was that I was not allowed to play a
That's
song to
wonderful.
anyone except her until
Wow.
that day. So we gathered in this warehouse after a show somewhere up north, and it was 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm wearing this coat.
Yeah, I
Actually,
know.
I was
You
so
recognize the coach.
freezing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I play her the song. They
Mm.
film it. So
Yeah.
what you see on the
You just see
video?
the tears start to
Yeah,
appear in her
yeah.
eyes.
And
You know.
then if you follow the film, what she says at the end, and
Yeah.
that's on. People can see that now. It's on the BBC Radio 2 website. So they filmed her reaction to me trying to tell something of her story, etc.
Mm.
And I'm halfway through the song, and I kind of look across, and I can see the tear, and I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
thinking, is that because she hates it, or because
Yeah. Wow.
and then it went nuts, and I
Mm.
ended up on the lunchtime news with it, BBC News and BBC Breakfast, and played it on Radio 2 and Jeremy Vine and stuff, and suddenly my show started selling out wherever I was going. It was an interesting little time.
So what's kind of nice about that? I mean, obviously, it's nice, you know, to have if you like, you need commercial success. There's no harm in having
Yeah.
commercial success, but it's nice that you've got a song which is a storytelling song, but also which has kind of quite a profound message,
Yeah,
and you're able to
it was on.
get the message out and engage
Yeah,
with it. You know,
it would be something I was comfortable with, in
yeah,
terms of, if I was going to suddenly, yeah, it was. And a lady called Helen Thomas, who's the head of Radio 2, really got behind the thing too. And she played it recently to everyone in the industry in London, the video of that, because she said we should be doing more of this. And
yes.
so it was just an interesting moment. You can't plan for these things.
Isn't that interesting though? So, you know, that song and its message, let's have more of it on the BBC.
Yeah.
And then the other stuff, let's have less of that on the BBC.
Well,
so, you know,
yeah, I mean the song is impartial, isn't it? It's just
yeah, it's
telling
not,
a
it's
story.
not, yeah.
There is a moment in it I thought might not make it through, where I say the measure of a country's prosperity is
Yeah.
not the wealth it holds, which is not my quote. I'm quoting that, but
Yeah.
but in the absence of poverty and equal opportunity for all, which goes against what many would believe that this current government is supplying us with. So, but I thought, well, fair play the BBC. They let that pass, and I was allowed to say it.
So you were effectively sort of commissioned then, as such, sort of.
Yeah, it's like an old painter saying, "Will you paint this view or something?" So I was commissioned to write a song about that.
How did you I'm interested as a songwriter. How did you, because it's in the Dadgad tuning, I think it's in.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful piece. I love the music anyway. Did you just think through the stories? How did you go from that commission to be in the final song?
It's always, for me, I'm always trying to get words down on paper before I'm looking for music. Without sounding arrogant, the music is the easiest part. It's, you can find something that fits. I have those skills as a guitar player to be able to find something, or to sing it and just come up with it, or a vibe or whatever. So again, I made lots of notes and recorded my little chats with Andrea, so that I've got these stories, and I begin to jot those down. I thought the name Albert's Place was kind of interesting as well. I wanted to refer back to the history of that, hence the chorus, with the meat and coal, but maybe now, what it's doing now, etc. So it was just winding my way through those stories and thinking, how can I best present these that would tell the story. And for instance, the lines about the businessman and the nurse, it's not just people that
Yeah,
you might
yeah,
necessarily think
yeah.
who are struggling these days, but a nurse has to come in because she's ashamed to, but she comes, and the businessman just wants to feed his kids. So um, you're trying to paint the whole picture with some balance, so that people will not be switched off, but rather will empathize with those stories, to draw people into this
Yes,
painting with colors
yeah.
people.
It's a beautiful tune as well, by the way.
Oh well, thank you. I didn't really think much
It's a really
about that.
hooky
It's
tune. I mean, I liked it straight away. You know.
oh, thank you. It's just yeah, I just mess about and start with the words, and that bit comes fairly easy to me. It's for me, it's the work, the real work that's is the lyric. Yeah,
Of course, you captured the moment as well. You know, during lockdown. You know, we'll get through this. You know, you got a real neat way of
yeah.
capturing the kind of zeitgeist, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I'm just drawn to the moment, to this is what I should be writing about, and
Yeah.
I do write about romantic love as such. But I just, once I've done one song, it's like, well, let's, I that's probably why I've never had those hits, because I'm just not very good at writing that sort of romantic love connection type songs more than maybe one every couple of years. Because okay, I've said that. What shall I say now? And there's so much to say. There's so much that we can
Well,
articulate,
there's
and
so much going on, isn't there?
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Not
I
all of it good.
no, and as I've
Mm,
said before, the guitar
mm,
is my cheap therapist, and will
yeah.
continue to allow me to. I mean, even last week, just felt quite despairing in the moment, and I wrote a line. I'm folding like a kite that's lost its wind, and there it sits in my book, waiting now for the rest to join in. But it'll come from there and become a song, because um, there was a moment, and I kind of think that those moments when those things come, those little lines drop, or the little idea, they're very special moments. And if you are arrogant enough to ignore them, then the song will go down the road to Paul McCartney or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I just jot the thing down as soon as I get that inspiration, just little ideas. Or if I play something on the guitar, record it straight away, because you won't have the nuance of it.
No, that's right.
You have to capture it in those moments. So always being open to uh, songs at any moment, becomes a way of life. Yeah.
So I mean, probably about. I was thinking in the car on the way down myself with people. I know you're a big Springsteen fan.
Mm.
You know, there's a storyteller. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, Bob Dylan,
Yeah,
Leonard Cohen, these
yeah.
kind of people. Are these the kind of people you
Gravitate towards.
yeah,
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 definitely. No, if I go into the studio, and my home studio in the house, and I'm looking to get into that creative vibe, then whilst I'm setting up, there'll be Dylan or
yeah,
Bruce or Joni Mitchell or Neil Young or
yeah.
something. Um, no, all North American, I just mentioned, right? So
Yes,
far,
yes,
yeah,
yes, of
yeah,
course.
but uh, yeah, I'm drawn to that narrative of telling the story, and showing emotion, and being involved in that way. Yeah.
Just to ask you, something I wanted to ask you about with storytelling and having some depth to that storytelling. If you think about, you know, Pete Seeger and, you know, the kind of early days and the inspiration, all of that stuff had then on Dylan and the idea of folk song, you know, to a large extent,
Mm.
I would say you're a folk singer to a large
Yeah, I
extent,
guess so.
and that you telling stories, etc. Um, do you think, you know, how healthy is that as a kind of songwriting and performance thing? Do you see it moving forward positively? Hopefully for you, it will, of course. But I mean, is it something that people, you know, because we kind of have we moved away from that? So do we enough of us still get that? You know?
Yeah, I think that tradition will always be with us. Hopefully, will be carried on, and it doesn't have to be in the tradition of some guy with an acoustic guitar. You can have it in a punk band or
Yeah,
a dance music. That those messages can still be there. Um, I don't think it maybe when it burst onto the scene, in the mid '60s there, and out of Greenwich Village, and
yeah,
all those,
yeah,
you had Phil Oakes and Dylan, and
yeah.
like you say, and Joan Baez. I don't know if we'll have another moment like that where it actually is really popular. I played a lot of the folk festivals in the country, and it's noticing that the age is, you know, the folks that are going to it are not going to be around forever, you know, and whilst there is a younger element there, I think that it's kind of finally in the balance, and I think I see a kind of an amalgamation between Americana and folk anyway, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
whereas folk music in Britain is perhaps seen as a little bit more of that sort of traditional type of stuff that was played in the pubs and
Bob Harris was very supportive of you, I think, wasn't he?
yeah, Bob,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, you know,
So
and I think sometimes think that what I do is more Americana than
yeah.
folk. If did I just say that? I think I might have done it, but oh, there's a moment too.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure where I fit, but I I I think there will always be people standing up for in the moment in music. It's always done that, and I think whatever
Mm.
shape the music is, there will always be people who will use music to highlight issues, to highlight our emotions, highlight you know, the tough things, as well as the beautiful things. I hope so. God,
Yes.
yeah,
Well, I certainly do.
yeah.
But we're sitting in this beautiful Motown music today,
I
and
know
it's
it's
surrounded by, you know, kind of
it,
Americana, you
it's
know.
cruel. Every time I come in here,
Yeah.
I want to.
Last
Yeah,
time I came in, I ended up buying one. So,
you
you know,
did.
yeah,
I
yeah.
bought one off him too, Mike. I know a beautiful Gibson J45.
Oh, did you in here? Did
Yeah,
you? Oh, wow.
yeah, 1964, and
Oh,
I
wow.
actually wrote most of 1960 on it.
Oh,
So
great.
I've had paybacks, and for the money, I had to sell one of my older guitars to get it, but it's got this incredible tone to it,
Mm.
especially in the just that lower strummy sort of sound, you know.
Yeah. I think J45 might be out of my league, Martin, you know, so
well,
we'll have to
well,
see,
you
you know.
never know. You never know. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to say on behalf of, you know, Keep Cardiff Live, thanks ever so much for talking to us
It's a
today,
pleasure. I
because,
always enjoy it.
you know, you've just come back from 122 tour.
That's all
You're
right.
doing okay, you know,
I'm
and
all
you
right.
still find time to talk to us.
No, I love it.
And for you, I suppose, you know, your fan base in Cardiff and Wales who've sort of always been there for you, I
Well,
suppose.
yeah, absolutely. I'm grateful for everyone whoever buys a ticket and puts it on the fridge and gets a babysitter, or perhaps that's not my demographic anymore. They just come anyway, but they don't need babysitters. But in the same sense, you know, the work that you and Tony are doing is fantastic. You know, I remember doing the first one, and it's great that you're shining light on the local scene here and all the wonderful talent that comes out of Wales. I miss a lot of it because I'm always on the road somewhere, you know. But I'm aware so much of the homegrown talent here in Wales, and all that you do to help it, and just the arts in general. We so need art right now to
Oh, don't we?
help us represent and illustrate
Mm.
these days, so that we can remember who we really are. Because otherwise, you know, I'd be lost without it, without those paintings, without that poetry, without that music. I'd be bereft.
Are you on a hiatus now following the tour? You sort of get your breath back and rebuild. What's next on the agenda?
Well, I have Bob Harris and I are doing some shows through the summer where
Great.
we're in conversation together,
Lovely,
where
yeah.
we
Oh,
chat,
brilliant.
and I sing a few songs and interview him, and vice versa.
Oh, great.
So I'm doing that. I've got some festivals, but I was in the studio all day yesterday writing songs. You know, so there's a hiatus from the road, from
Yeah.
shows, obviously, but. Having said that, I'm off to the States in mid-April and Canada for a 5-week tour. So, but I'm writing. I'm thinking of the next record now.
So a simple yes or no. Is there an album title in your mind for the next one?
No,
not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
No, not yet. No, that hasn't dropped. With 1960, it was there straight away. But no,
yeah. Here comes the younger title too.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. But yeah, still, the title will come. It's gotta put the backpack on and start climbing the mountain.
I suppose, you know, the songs fill the bus and then it drives off, isn't it?
Then
yeah.
He says, "How about this?" Yeah. And you, there it is.
Nice. Martyn, thanks very much. Really nice to see you.
You too.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Brilliant interview.